Welcome to The Becks, a podcast that explores multimedia horror with hosts Becky and Sydney. Join us as we talk about movies, books, video games, music, and much, much more.
Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sydney Rebecca.
And I'm Rebecca Snow.
And we're the Becks.
Back to doing nothing but audio.
Yep. Please watch the video that we uploaded. It was really hard for us.
Yeah, that was a huge step in some direction. I'm not sure which one, but we took a step.
We did. This week, we are talking about The Grudge, or Ju-on, as it's known, its original title. Which does roughly translate to The Grudge.
Yes. Yeah.
So the original Japanese horror film came out in 2002. And then when it was remade for American audiences, what year did that come out?
2004.
Oh, wow. So only 2 years after. I wonder if they were... Oh, that's weird. Because it takes a little while to make a movie.
Yeah, it says The Grudge is a 2004 American supernatural horror film. Directed by Takashi Shimizu. I'm sure I slaughtered that and I apologize. And written by Steven Susko.
Oh, that's interesting because the original director was Takashi Shimizu.
Really?
Huh. Okay.
And it starred Sarah Michelle Gellar. I was incorrect earlier when we were talking.
Oh, you don't like Sabrina?
Not really, no.
Controversial.
I know.
So we kind of went back to our roots here. I watched the original Japanese version, and Becky watched the American version.
Yeah.
And we're kind of compare notes and say what we liked about them. And I have seen the American version. It was many years ago, though.
The release date of the American version was actually October 22nd, so it was literally 20 years old this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Fun fact. So when the Japanese one came out, critics liked it a lot, but audiences didn't like it so much. People really liked The Ring, which came out before this, and it didn't really stack up.
Against The Ring?
Yeah. Since then, it's kind of garnered a more positive reception, and people really like it. I was told that the Japanese version was scarier than the American version, so I was looking forward to watching this. And I watched it in my bed in the dark alone. And it was very creepy. I don't know if it's just because of the atmosphere or what. I was telling Becky that a housefly had followed me into my room and was bashing itself against my phone screen, like right at the beginning of the movie, and it scared the shit out of me. It was right when the cat gets grabbed, and then the fly was hitting the screen, and I was like, oh God! It was very it was traumatic. I killed the fly. Fuck flies.
Wow. Violence.
So the Japanese version isn't really told chronologically, and it focuses on 4 or 5 different characters. Like it goes from who you expect to be the main character, it goes from her to somebody else, and they're all connected to each other. Whether it's through their family, it's the caregivers of this old woman, it's the old detective in the original case. This house that the curse is living within, for lack of a better term, it's every family that's ever moved into it has gone missing or died.
And that's the American version is the same thing. It's the house. And I did notice that the American version and the original version that you watched both listed what the grudge is. That it's a curse born when someone dies in extreme rage or sorrow and lingers where the person dies. Mm-hmm. And those who encounter it will die, and the curse is reborn repeatedly, passing from victim to victim in an endless growing chain of horror. Both movies actually wrote that right out. It was in the subtitles of because I watched just the first few minutes and saw that and was comparing, because I was going to try to watch the original one with you. I'm like, I'll watch that one because it's scarier. And then I shut it off and went back to the American version.
Well, you think right off the bat, it's this guy kills his cat.
Yeah, it's super violent.
Which I don't think he kills the cat, or I don't know if the cat even exists. It's odd. There's a mix of the supernatural and the psychological in the storytelling, which is good. I like that a lot. And it's interesting as an audience member to try to go through and be like, okay, That definitely is supernatural. That definitely is more of a psychological aspect, but you have that overlap where you kind of have to use context clues and just your general know-how of horror movies to try to figure out, oh, like, is this actually happening? Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of just adds the spookiness, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think the American version jumped around a lot, too, so... I told you that I watched it, but I didn't know how much I absorbed of it because it didn't, like, call me in. I did have a jump scare right off the bat, immediately. But it kind of, for me, the plot, it didn't keep me engaged as much as I thought it was going to.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, she's the caretaker for the woman of the house, right?
She's the second caretaker. This movie starts out with a couple at a apartment building, and the girl's laying in bed, and her man is standing at the balcony just staring, and she's like, is there something wrong? And he's just looking around, he's not saying anything, and then he just literally throws himself over the balcony to his death. To
this day, that's one of my favorite openings to a horror movie.
Yeah.
It's so memorable.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it's
there's
really freaky.
Yeah, and there's no, he's not, we're looking around terrified either.
Yeah.
He's just kind of looking around like he's just engaged in something in his own mind, and doesn't even speak to her, and over he goes.
Yeah.
And then they show his mutilated body all twisted on the ground.
That's not how the Japanese version opens, sadly. But it was a good change, I think.
Yeah.
Enough to make it fresh. Like, it's a retelling, right? So does it take place in Tokyo, though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I always wonder about adaptations like this because, okay, so you're remaking it in English for an English audience or whatever, but you're still having... Yeah. It take place in Japan and stuff?
Yeah.
I'm not against it.
Well, I think that's the whole thing because basically the house is possessed. You don't really know that. They find it out because there's a diary and they start reading and they figure out what happened as you go along. The second family to be affected by this, where she comes in, Sarah Michelle Gellar comes in as a caretaker, they actually moved there for, I believe the character's name was Matt and Jennifer, and they brought his mom, who was beginning stage dementia. Mm-hmm. So they all moved to Tokyo to be there for his job.
Okay.
So
they're not, none of them are Japanese?
No, none of them are Japanese, and that's part of the plot is that his wife, Jennifer, is very upset that they gave up everything. They moved. She's there with the mom that's ill. And the mom just kind of goes into almost like a catatonic state once they enter that house, mm-hmm. which you find out is, of course, because of what's going on there. Mm-hmm. She's upset because she can't speak Japanese. Mm-hmm. And so it's a culture shock, and she's stuck in that house, and she has no friends, and she doesn't know how to make a friend. So that develops
That would be really scary.
Yeah, that develops a lot of conflict there.
I've never been to Japan. But I've heard that the people there are very friendly, especially to foreigners.
I don't know. My niece lived there for years. I could ask her that.
So it's not, I don't think it would be too difficult to make friends. But it is still a very scary situation.
So is that true, Emily? Are the people there very friendly? Let us know, because I know you're listening.
Part of the culture in Japan, too, is caring for elder people.
Yes.
Usually, when a couple gets married, parents of the groom move in with them. Mm-hmm. And they take care of them.
Yes.
That isn't a thing really in the United States. We have a different culture here. But it's very important to them to take care of their elderly.
Yeah.
So,
which it should be here, too. We should
sure.
have more resources. Maybe not have to move someone in with you because that's hard sometimes when you both have to work.
Yeah.
But having facilities that are not what we have in the U.S. So that's all I have to say about that.
So is the house like a traditional Japanese house then? With the sliding doors?
It does have sliding doors, and the closets are sliding because there is another caregiver that comes in first. Her name is Yoko. And she comes in, and she walks up to the lady, and she's like, do you remember me? You know, because she has dementia. Mm-hmm. And she finds her alone. There's nobody there. So she's, trying to talk to her, and she can't get any response from her. So she's doing laundry or picking up the house or whatever, and she hears thump, thump, thump. And so she goes looking for the sound and finds it in the closet. And so she opens the closet and gets up. There's a bench in the closet. And she gets up on the bench and she sees there's an attic access. And she pushes that up and is looking around. And all of a sudden, bam! There's the scary bitch.
So it's the woman?
Yeah, it's the woman.
That she sees? Okay.
Yeah, she sees the woman. Terrified me.
What
That
happened?
was my jump scare.
What?
She hauled her up in the closet
Okay.
and you never saw her again.
Okay, yeah, so she does disappear. The first caretaker goes missing later. He's indisposed, so he has Rika is her name. He has her go and just be like, just spend the day there, do normal stuff. The house is trashed when she gets there. I don't know if it was just interesting because the family didn't seem to be very neat in general, but from one scene to the next, it's like the house got trashed every time.
Yeah, that's when Sarah Michelle Gellar arrives and she goes to take care of the lady. There's stuff just flung all over the stairs, and again, the lady's still alone, which I don't understand.
There was some poltergeist activity that was taking place because of the Ju-on, the Grudge. And the daughter-in-law of the mother, she thought that it was her just fucking around, I guess. She was kind of catatonic, though, too. Like, she didn't speak. She kind of just laid there. In fact, when Rika comes and she finds her all alone, there's messy bed stuff. Like, she hasn't been moved. She's just been kind of sitting in her
that's
own
the way it
waste.
was when Sarah Michelle Gellar comes. So she gets all the bedding off. She washes the bedding. She gives her a sponge bath.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then she starts hearing things.
Wow, so they're really similar.
Yeah. So when she hears things, she goes up the stairs, and that's when she's carrying the vacuum. It's like a canister vacuum. And so she's picking up all these papers and stuff. And she gets up there and she finds a door that's taped shut, a closet door that's completely taped shut.
Was there a cat in there?
She thought there was. That's what it sounded like there was.
And then was there Toshio?
Yes.
Was his name Toshio?
Yes. Yes.
Uh-huh.
So yes, the scary little boy.
Yeah.
So.
Which he looks just like a regular little boy. Like, he has a bandage on his knee.
Yeah.
He's kind of beat up, and he kind of is playing with his knees a little bit with his fingers. And she immediately calls the cops.
She calls her boss. She calls her boss and tells him what's going on. She's like, just please hurry and get over here.
Oh, no, that is what happened. I apologize.
So it really mirrors.
It's like the same movie, except with just American people.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, why the fuck did they feel the need to make this?
I don't know. Maybe because then it wouldn't have subtitles?
The Ring remake, that's the American version, was really successful too. That movie still freaks me out. The horse that jumps off the ferry, I'll never get over that.
That's a terrifying movie. If I sit and think about it, it makes me, I get palpitations and stuff. I don't like that movie at all. If I see it's on somewhere, I shut it off. Even if I see, the trailers coming up, nope. Fuck that bitch. Not watching that shit.
But I think maybe they were kind of trying to ride the coattails of success there.
They might have been. Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know about you, but the way that, I don't know how, it was the same director, so I imagine they were shot pretty similarly. The cinematography was really creepy. The way that they would just have the camera, like, they wouldn't follow the characters around really with the camera. They would set the camera somewhere, and you would see the character go here, and then it would cut, and then they would go here, and then it would cut. It wasn't a lot of camera movement. It was very static, and there were so many little nooks and crannies in the house that every time a character turned a corner, you were like, there's something's gonna be there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even necessarily a jump scare sometimes when there was something there. It was very subtle and kind of like a creeping sense. And it was a lot of out of the corner of your eye or in the reflections of the mirrors.
So did the woman make the creepy sounds?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. That's horrible sound. It's horrible.
It makes the sound wave on the recording look super interesting. Yeah, it was the creepy noise. What I found to be interesting, too, was... Okay, so did they talk about the original story at all?
Okay, not until
why?
The end. Not until the end, because actually when Sarah Michelle Gellar opens the closet to begin with, she finds the diary. Okay, that is the original woman's, whatever her name was.
The Deus Ex Machina diary.
where she was talking about her professor and that's what made her. She was talking.
See, that's not in the original.
She was talking about her professor, writing about her professor, and her husband assumed that she was having an affair, so he murdered them all.
It was implied that the original male ghost that killed his wife, when he took over the next family, the husband was like, she was no good cheating bitch or, whatever.
Yeah.
So that was the implication, but they never went out and said.
Well, see, the original guy, and like I'm telling you, I kind of lost interest and I was folding clothes and stuff because it just didn't engage me as much as I thought it would. The first jump scare was good, but it just seemed like it was, I don't know, it wasn't as scary and creepy as I had hoped it would be. It kind of, at times, was just like, okay, let's get to the story. I mean, there were certain scenes, like, did they have a bathtub scene in there where people were coming to look at the house?
So there was a scene when Rika was in the shower and she's washing her hair.
Yes, that scene's in there with Sarah Michelle Gellar and the hand comes out of her head.
The hand comes out of her head?
Well, there's a scene with the landlord of the property. He's showing it to the American couple when they come. And he goes in and he notices the bath is filled with black water.
Ew.
So he's trying to get it to drain before they see it. Obviously, you're trying to rent this place. And he reaches in and he tries to grab the drain. And all of a sudden, he hears like giggling. It's the little boy.
Uh-huh.
And he actually comes out with a handful of hair in his hand. And he's shaking and jumping. And the guy walks in and is like, we'll take it. And he just was, okay. So there were creepy things like that. But when the guy that originally jumps, he actually comes back and comes to Sarah Michelle Gellar, and he's the one that leads her to all the clues and explains basically what has happened in the house. So is he a ghost
at that point? Or
yes, I believe so.
Or is the beginning of the movie actually like the end afterwards?
That I couldn't tell you.
Because this one jumps around chronologically too, because at one point you hear on the news that Rika was found dead in her apartment. But then later on, she literally is back at the house doing stuff.
So that's weird. So it jumps around. I don't know. I couldn't tell you that.
I just find it interesting. The original curse makes sense to me. I understand why the woman would come back and be a vengeful spirit or what have you. But I don't know why it affected her son as well. I know he was killed. He was never found. He technically went missing. They didn't know whether he was killed or not. It's implied in the movie that he was killed because obviously when she sees the ghost, he's still 5.
Yeah.
And this is like 6 years later, so he would have been 11 and he hasn't grown at all. So it's like, okay, so he died. But why is he participating in the curse as well? Was it just his spirit was taken in by the vengeance?
I would think so, because it literally says that when you die in great anger and violence, that the grudge just gets you.
I always felt throughout the whole of this movie, I feel like they did a good job. Okay, yes, it was scary and people were dying and it was awful and everything was terrible. Yes. But there was also an underlying tragedy to it all.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you think the American version did a good job of incorporating that?
I think they did towards the end. It took them a while to get there because they showed the father and him losing it, and it gave that. I think you kind of developed a sort of sympathy for the woman and her son that were haunting these people, and because then you realized. I think that's why it took them so long to get there, because they wanted you to think they were horrible and this was awful and this was terrifying. And then when you knew the story, well, then you kind of felt bad. Then you wondered why, when she was murdered so horribly, why she's taking it out on every innocent person that comes near her, because that's just what happened to her. So the grudge kind of boggles my mind. I can understand if he killed himself and he was the one that carried that.
I'm assuming because of the violence of the death and the tragedy of it, the spirit becomes corrupted. It's not really that person anymore.
So, yeah, you do get some sympathy. You do understand the story and what was happening and why. But she's still a scary, scary little presence.
Yeah,
she never goes away.
Whoever the actress was that played the original woman that died, the perpetrator of the grudge, she was so good at like contorting and like crawling around on the ceilings and the stairway and stuff
Creepy
like that.
contortionist women scare me, and children, and that should not be a thing. If you have a movie where someone's all of a sudden crab walking, and that just makes my heart pound. It scares me out like it.
And she's just like twitching her neck around and
making the neck and the snapping noises and
making the noise.
That noise.
I still remember when I saw the original one when I was, I don't know, 14 maybe. Me and all my friends we would just do that to each other randomly.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because it was creepy.
Oh, 100% creepy. It's still creepy to think about it. I mean, if you're standing in a room by yourself and you all of a sudden just hear that, are you going to stay there? I'm running like a crazy person. I'm punching anything that gets in my way.
So this is the other thing, too. I totally agree with you about the physical violence thing. Okay, so in the movie, you repeatedly see these ghosts, or the Grudge, the Ju-on, touch people and interact with them and drag them and stuff like that. If they can touch you like that, I feel like you could touch them and start throwing a punch. Like, no,
yeah, right?
Not one single person. Not any of the police officers, any of the men, none of the women. They didn't try scratching, biting, pulling hair.
Yeah, there was no fighting back. It was just done.
You best believe that if something grabbed me like that, I would be punching the shit out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I would at least try.
Yeah, I'm not going down without a fight.
I'm not saying it's going to work, but I'm going to try.
Ugh. No. Mm-mm. Creepy, dark-haired, white-faced beings need to stay away from me.
Yeah, the little boy ghost was definitely more mischievous, but he was kind of what you saw before the woman ghost gotcha.
Yeah.
So he was like a harbinger almost.
The cat noises he made were just creepy.
So there's
creepy.
really funny scene in the original where she gets woken up, quote unquote, by a bunch of cat noises. She's still asleep, but she doesn't know that. And she wakes up, quote unquote, and she's surrounded by cats, and there's different cats moving around the room. But there's also, if you look closely enough in the scene, there's just statues of cats. And they're the same statues. Like, they're not different statues. They're just put different places around the room.
That's funny.
The weird decision for a ghost to do that with. I guess he missed his own cat.
Yeah,
and he was
that's what I'm thinking.
Have a bunch of cats. So I guess probably he did end up killing the cat. Now that I'm really thinking about it, which upsets me.
Yeah, I think he killed them all. I think the cat was the little boys, and he was just so angry he was going to destroy everything at that point.
He was a real monster, driven by imaginary jealousy.
Jealousy is a horrible, horrible emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It can cause a lot of violence. It's awful.
So, let me see if there's anything else I want to touch on.
It's a good movie. There's jump scares, but it wasn't one of my favorites. It's not one of the ones that I'll be like, let's go back and watch that again.
This movie it's spawned many sequels, as well as remakes, because it was just remade in, 2018 or something?
I think so. I think that's what it said.
Which I haven't seen. I'm sure it's not very good. I just am so skeptical about stuff anymore.
2020, actually.
Oh, okay. It was a COVID release.
Oh, it's probably really bad.
What is the tomato ratings?
20%.
Oh, it's not like I called that or anything.
No.
It might be okay. I didn't expect...
The popcorn meter from the audience is 23, so I don't think it's very good.
Oh, audiences didn't even like it.
No,
okay.
That's too bad.
It makes me so sad because there's so many ways you could tell a story like this.
Yeah.
You don't have to do the haunted house again, necessarily. You could do anything.
Yeah.
It could literally be anything or anywhere because violent murders happen anywhere at any time, unfortunately. The first Omen proved that these prequel things, they can work. That was a really good movie.
Yeah, that was a good movie, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's just laziness. I know that a lot of people have fatigue from remakes or sequels or whatever. Do you feel that way?
I do. Growing up in the 90s or 80s and 90s and now seeing a lot of those films be remade, it gets to the point where I'm like, really? Come on. Because a lot of those movies are phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Just really good movies. Like when we saw the fake ad that said that The Lost Boys was going to be remade.
Yeah.
I was extremely offended and angry. Interested because they said that it was going to be Evan Peters that was in it. But then again, I was mad because why take something that is so perfect and have to try and redo it? So for me, that's my thing. But
so
then like the first Omen though, the first Omen was not a remake.
Yeah.
It was a prequel.
Yep.
It showed how we got to the Omen, which I told you I thought was very cool.
Yeah.
Because I was like, Oh my God. You hadn't seen The Omen yet, have you? Or it's been a long time so you don't remember?
It when I was younger.
So I had just watched The Omen probably a couple years ago, so I knew the whole thing. And so when we got to the end of that, I was like, oh my God, there we go. Okay. So that was cool. But yeah, just remaking stuff. Yeah, I'm kind of blasé towards it. Yeah, whatever. Stop.
So
Come up with some original content.
The one movie you never want to be remade is...
Oh, it better not be The Lost Boys. They better never touch my Lost Boys. And Stand By Me. That's my favorite movie of all time. And if they tried to remake that, I might have to punch someone in the face too. Because there will never be a cast like River Phoenix and Corey Feldman. Shout out to Corey Feldman. Give that boy respect.
Yeah, we shout him out all the time on
we
this,
do.
on this show.
We do. I would like to meet him. Say hey. Yeah, those are the two movies that I would be really upset if they tried to remake.
Trying to think. I don't want The Labyrinth to ever be remade. It's not.
Oh yeah, you can't do that either.
It's not. It wouldn't be the same. Like David Bowie was such an important part of that.
For sure.
Yeah. That would be mine.
There's just a certain cast and a certain way, and those movies like Lost Boys. Could you ever see anybody else playing David other than Kiefer Sutherland? Mm-mm. No. It's just that's what was meant to be. They
would cast like Pete Davidson or something.
Yeah. They take this iconic movie and they take a movie, a script that's just a script, and they make it iconic. Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel about The Stand By Me. That's how I feel about Lost Boys. And yeah, The Labyrinth, no one could ever step in that role and be right. Couldn't. Mm-mm. It's just like trying to take someone, and I'm sorry, Queen, they have a singer singing for Freddie Mercury that will never... Yeah, they have...
What?
You didn't know that?
I did not know that. I knew they did it for Journey. I don't give a fuck about Journey, though, so I didn't really care. And I thought he sounded good, too, so...
The Journey guy?
Yeah.
He does, but he's not... He's just not. Original Journey's better. Sorry.
I mean...
But again, I grew up...
I don't think Journey's that good to begin with.
Journey's not phenomenal, but... Yes, I don't... Steve Perry was Steve Perry. And nobody can sing like him. Yeah, that guy can almost, but he's not quite right. And nobody can sing like Freddie Mercury. No. So, let me look this up. Adam Lambert is who they have singing.
Stop!
No! He tours with them.
Adam Lambert's a good singer, but it's like what did they just find the first gay twink they could, and we're just like, yeah, you can be the new Freddie.
I don't know.
Is that offensive?
I don't know.
Did I just offend? Well, I don't care. You know what?
No. I understand they still want to tour. They still want to do the music, but they're not Queen. They're not Queen without Freddie. I'm sorry. They will never be Queen without Freddie. No. And maybe it's not that they're trying to replace him. They're just trying to honor him. I don't think I could ever go watch them because for me, Queen will always be Freddie Mercury. Some things just can't be filled in for or replaced.
So, have you ever heard of the band Static X?
I've heard of them. Have I listened to them? Probably not.
So, the lead singer of Static X died. I think it was a drug overdose. Mm-hmm. This is one of James's favorite bands. And they have a new singer, and he wears, like, a skull that's, like, the original singer.
Oh, no.
And James is really conflicted about it, because he finds it to be kind of weird. But I guess his family is okay with it. And other fans that I've talked to of Static X, like my friend Bill, shout out Bill. He designed our artwork as well as he wrote our music.
Yes, thank you.
He said that they do a great job. So, I don't know. It's just one of those weird things. I think part of the reason why it works with Static X is like their whole aesthetic.
Maybe, but that just seems weird. Seems weird to me.
When James first told me about it, I was like, oh, that's kind of fucked up.
That is kind of just creepy as hell.
And then you have those weird, like, AI concerts that people put on of, like, Michael Jackson and stuff.
Yeah, I can remember I went and saw Reba McEntire, and she did, like, a hologram of Vince Gill because they did a duet together. He was still alive, so it wasn't so creepy. But then they started doing it with people that have died. And Michael Jackson would have been appalled if they'd have done that to him. And Prince had told everybody if they ever did it to him, he was coming back to find them. And I hope they never do, because I would cry. I would cry. Don't do that. Just don't do that. Freddie, I don't think, would want that either. Mm-hmm. It's just awful.
Back to the Grudge.
Back to the Grudge. You know us. We're on a tangent now and then.
That's what we do. But it is an interesting conversation to be had about remakes and stuff like that. I don't want to, as someone who is a creative, I don't want to think about the fact that, like, okay, are there really no new ideas anymore?
That's what Roger and I have said. Every time we see a new one come out that's just a remake, it's like, seriously? Is there not someone that can write their own script?
Yeah.
How many books, horror books out there? How many different things out there are there that have never been made into movies?
Yeah.
So why are we not reaching for something like that instead of...
No, and me and James have this conversation all the time, too, with comic book movies and how schlocky they get, and how when people who really love the source material are put behind it, and it turns out really good, and people really like it, and then the studio just throws money and is like, make a sequel, but they don't care about the story being good anymore. They just care about the property because the property makes them money. It's depressing.
It is very depressing. I just got a message from Belinda. She just listened to our other podcast, our Halloween special. She said, hey. Now, her and her husband have been married for 30-some years. They've been together since they were 15 years old. Hey, me and Mike were just listening to the podcast, and mostly what we took from it is, you were calling me a whore. You said you thought I was a virgin. I was a virgin. You owe me an apology, bitch. So, apparently I owe my best friend an apology. We've been friends since we were 3 years old.
Oh
Literally, 3 years old. She's like a sister to me. I didn't know. I knew her and Mike were together from the time she was 15. So... I know that it wasn't very long after that, Missy. So, apologize. She was not a whore. She's literally been with the same man since she was 15 freaking years old.
That was not the implication.
Not at all. I was just saying I only cared about me being a virgin and being sacrificed. I was hoping everybody else was, so they could die first. Just saying. The car was my parents'. I was flying out of there.
Wow.
I would sacrifice.
The truth is revealed. Sorry, Belinda.
Survival of the fittest, bitch. Of course, they'd have both won. They were both in sports. Jennifer was like a cross-country runner, and Belinda was a basketball star, so there you go.
And Belinda, you gave her your pocket knife.
I did.
Don't forget
she tried to gut me with it, so...
So, yes, please listen to our Halloween episode. It's so funny. Apparently, Becky calls Belinda a whore. I don't remember that part, but...
She'll forgive me. It'll be okay.
Look at that, just taking the friendship for granted.
Oh my gosh. Too funny.
So I think that's going to be it for this episode.
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about next?
We have to figure that out. We might be, there might be a week down, depending on how Sydney feels. She's got some stuff coming up next week, so.
I'm getting surgery.
Yeah. So I don't know if she's going to be up and about, ready to record next week at all, because she's having surgery on Wednesday and taking the next 2 days off to relax at home to feel better.
Yes.
So hopefully she'll be back on that following Monday, but we will have this episode, obviously, uploaded.
Yeah, that'll be when I'm recovering.
Yes. And then the next one will be maybe the following week, depending. Maybe I could do something quick just so we have something going up, but...
To be determined.
Yes. So we'll see. What would you like to hear? We need people to tell us.
Yes, please email us your listener stories.
Yes, that would be so fun to have an episode of Listener Stories. Listener Stories?
Listener stories.
Listener Stories.
Who's that Pokemon? Listener stories.
Anyway.
Today the pod, tomorrow the world. My name is Sydney Rebecca.
And I'm Rebecca Snow.
And we're the Becks.